The Simpsons conspiracy. How they predict the future. We've always had individuals and groups that can look beyond the limitations that are naturally placed on human thought and existence to make some really interesting new assertions. And overall, this leads to some really mind-blowing discoveries that shape our existence to this day. Although many of these discoveries have factual sources and outcomes, some leave us with unimaginable trails of mysteries to unravel. And at times, we tend to find the most interesting things in the most unsuspecting places, leaving us to wonder, how did these things get here? And how do we get to explain them? The 1989 premiere animation TV series, The Simpsons, has been one of the many sources of mind-blowing discoveries that have led many to believe that the writers might just have some kind of power of prediction. To this day, no one can tell for sure how they do it, but the series has in it some events that seem to have found their way out of the imaginative world and right into reality. At some point, people started to believe the idea of a shadow government, which itself has been featured in series like Inside Job, portraying the future through the series. So far, many still see the idea of conspiracy theories to be something worth overlooking. And this is not totally out of place, as there are often scarce resources to drive them. But the action that follows the propagation of some of these conspiracies often points to the notion that they might just be pointing to something after all. To this day, no one has given any explanation as to why the Netflix series Inside Job was canceled. And believe me, they really did poke around in spots that were likely to rattle potential guilty parties. So dismissing these theories outrightly might just not be the best line of action. From the prediction of Trump's presidency to the insinuation of the 9/11 attacks, we will be looking at some of the most striking happenings that were shown in the show, long before anyone could see it coming. Or maybe some did see them coming. In Bart to the Future, an episode of The Simpsons released in 2000, we saw the most breathtaking events in the show. Trump's presidency was mentioned when Lisa was seen in a vision to have taken over from him, as she mentioned in her speech that she had taken over from Trump and they are facing some financial crises as a result. This singular prediction of not just a Trump presidency, but also the crisis that followed right after is nothing short of mind-blowing. Although there was an interview that Trump had hinted that he will run for the presidency years before the show, it was still highly probable. Now, there's some things that make this particular instance stand out. The design of the stairs that we see Trump on in the show and his movements and gestures seem strikingly alike to what we saw on the show. And somehow, Lisa happened to match Kamala Harris's outfit at the swearing-in every detail down to the pearl necklace. Also, The Simpsons did actually predict Disney's takeover of Fox Studios. For $52 billion, Disney purchased the rights to own Fox Studios in 2017, lending credence to what might now be called a prediction that was featured in a 1998 episode of The Simpsons. In the show, Homer goes to pitch a film idea to the executives at Fox. As they were being taken through the area, we see the company logo of the Fox Studios right there, and beneath the logo, it clearly states that the company is a division of the Walt Disney Company. Maybe we are living in a simulation after all, because nobody believed that this would happen. But somehow, someone behind the show knew it would, 19 long years before it did. Censoring of Michelangelo's David statue featured in the 9th episode of the 2nd season of the show, showing the residents of Springfield protesting the display of the statue and the eventual cover-up of the statue. The whole protest was about the nudity of the sculpture. And moving forward, 25 years later, this was exactly what happened in St. Petersburg in Russia. Following the display of a replica of the statue in the center of the city, parents and others who used the area complained about the nudity, and a vote was held on the line action that will be taken to meet the people's request. Furthermore, there's been evidence that the 9/11 event was known far before it even happened. In The Simpsons, they showed this book with the number 9 written next to what appears to be the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center, forming the number 11. The the subtle ways some of these things are presented in the show make it a lot creepier than it should be. And this is not the first time that conspiracy theories have been made with regard to this particular heart-wrecking event. In the Joe Rogan podcast, Rogan traced the events that followed up to the bombing, which made it seem like a cover-up for a financial crime. And it happens that the case was being investigated in this building.
$1 trillion in transactions.
2.3.
The way everything is pieced together makes this insane. In this episode, one thing that could have been overlooked by an inexperienced eye is presented here. On this board, we see some kind of math problem that's written there. And that could just have been a bunch of numbers thrown together for the sake of the show, right? But there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. This will eventually turn out to be the problem used to solve the discovery of the Higgs boson God particle back in 2012. And the discovery of this particle took the construction of the largest machine ever designed by humans, which was built at CERN, and has been lauded as the most important discovery of the decade. It's just like someone had been sent into the future and is leaving clues for us in the show. And some really made inquiries with the writers to see how this is possible, and it turns out they had to source for an actual math problem as they wanted something authentic in the show. But what are the odds? Between 2014 and 2016, there was a deadly Ebola virus outbreak in West Africa, which claimed a lot of lives. But before this happened, there was rarely any attention paid to the virus. And it seems that once again, The Simpsons did drop a clue for this in the show. As you can see on the cover of this book, it does have Ebola boldly written on the cover. This moves to align the notion that some powerful people orchestrate some of these pandemics for some reasons. For some, it's a means of world population control. And for others, it's just another good way to maximize profit off the backs of suffering masses. And the way these events appear accurate makes it a lot more difficult to dismiss these things on the basis of luck. In a very recent event, on the 22nd of June this year, a very sad event that claimed the lives of 5 passengers aboard an exploration vessel owned by OceanGate. The 5 had set out on an adventure to explore the wreckage from the Titanic when they met their tragic end. And of the time of making this video, no detail has been made available on what could have actually compromised the submarine, as debris from the sub was found close to the Titanic wreck, but no signs of the passengers. And amazingly, this tweet turned up in the heat of discussing what might have gone wrong and shows that an episode of The Simpsons, Homer's paternity coot, released in 2006, had portrayed something really close to this. Mason Fairbanks takes Homer on a search for treasure in a submersible, and Mason gets caught and loses oxygen. It's, however, a happy ending in the show. In the OceanGate incident, Shahzada Dawood and his son Suleiman were sadly among the 5 passengers on the submersible. And the media was awake through the period after people learned that they had a limited amount of oxygen to survive on. From comments, some users seem to think that these are becoming strikingly similar for coincidences and think everything is planned out and is being controlled by some powerful people. Several people have tried to understand how these happenings that end up in real life came to be in The Simpsons, and there's been several theories on what might have made the events seem like predictions. To begin with, the show has been one of the longest running shows ever, with 750 episodes released from 1989 to date, and the show hasn't yet seen its end. So with this duration, some think that it might have just been sheer luck that these events happened to be shown in the series. But when you really think about it, the show's long-running time seems to even make it a lot spookier. Similar shows like Inside Job got taken off the air without explanation, but this one has somehow managed to stay on. And the way all these clues are integrated into the show just seems like something that was given a lot of thought. The 9/11 case, for instance. What are your thoughts on this? Should we start paying more attention to the possibility of some organization running the world on a pre-planned script?